it's a posse. We've got this Western theme going, and we're just so talking like a bunch of dudes in 2020. Should we be saying, welcome to the posse, partners? Just wondering.
Do
And
it.
that's where we should go, yeehaw, welcome to the posse.
There's a snake in my boot.
Somebody pours in the water hole.
I'm so not editing any of this.
Oh,
out.
no. Keep that. That has to stay. That has to stay.
Oh, man, that's freaking classic. Oh, gosh. That was part Festus from Gunsmoke and Woody from Toy Story. About 7 other
I was
Western.
thinking of the yeehaw scene from Red River with John Wayne and Montgomery Cliff. Okay, now that's City Slickers, but we can move on now.
Welcome to episode 3 of the Plastic Posse podcast. Now with even more caffeine and improved audio. We've received some feedback from a couple of listeners, and we really appreciate that. We've improved our sound quality. Hopefully you can hear that, and also the editing and pacing of the episode. So look forward to that and continue to give us that feedback. We really appreciate it. We're just learning and getting a little bit better each episode. Got a fun episode planned. TJ does a really deep dive into his Warhammer finishing techniques for both his figures and also his vehicles. And we also have an interview with a YouTuber, so stay tuned towards the end of the episode and check that out. Anyway, let's get going with the show. I'm really lucky to be joined by 2 of my best buddies who also both happen to be amazing modelers. First, we have our official Chicago Cubs fanboy and pop culture specialist, Doug Smith. How you doing, Doug?
I'm doing all right, but the Cubs, are they playing baseball right now?
I think they are. I think they have a good pitcher and a hitter or something.
There's some bats and some balls.
Exactly. Well, they did win a World Series in 2016, so they got that going.
That was a beautiful thing.
Also, once again, joining us from his secret laboratory somewhere near our nation's capital. We're not sure exactly where. We have our painting sorcerer, TJ Holler. How you doing, TJ?
Oh, pretty good. Just enjoying a nice quiet evening. Got my cat Kylo sitting in my lap here and ready to get into this.
Oh, I'm sneezing already.
What better way to do a podcast than with your cat on your lap? That's great. So, it's just time to do episode 3. It's really moving along fast here. We have lots to talk about today. So let's get started.
So I just wanted to remind our listeners to tune in and listen to our sister scale modeling podcasts, On the Bench, Plastic Model Mojo, and Scale Model Podcasts. These are all great podcasts, and we are huge fans, and they have been extremely supportive of us, and we could not thank them enough. Also, another reminder to support the Golden Sprue Awards over at www.goldensprueawards.com. Warren Start has put together a way for modelers to nominate their favorite new kits in several different genres, plus other categories like Best Paint, Best Aftermarket, etc. So everyone, please head over to www.goldensprueawards.com and start nominating all your favorites. I want to say he's even doing some giveaways for people that nominate, so that's something to look forward to.
Right, he's doing them weekly.
Yeah, so
he's not doing them all at the end. He's going to do them as he goes along.
It's a pretty cool website. I've checked it out myself and voted. So, yeah, I recommend you do the same thing. So, Doug, did we get any hobby shop shout-outs?
We surely did. Emilio Cuesta sent us this. He says, I would love to give a shout-out to my local hobby store, Burbank's House of Hobbies, of course, in Burbank, California. They have been around since 1952. The owners, Glenn and Ken, keep up with the best products, model kits of all genres, and die casts. They are huge supporters of the hobby, and they refer new enthusiasts to the local club and sponsor prizes and numerous modeling shows. Rob Morrison, another hobby shop shout out, Gundam Plus in Melbourne. The owner, Daryl, is a modeler who is aiming to have an old-style shop where you can meet up, have a build session, or a chat. Apologize to the many other shops in Melbourne. He just called out the one, and he loves you all. But keep it coming. If you've got any shout-outs, let us know. We want to hear what you got and who's taking care of you out there.
Yeah, that's a great point, Doug. Now's a good time to kind of remind our listeners, we love your feedback. Love to hear what you think about what we're doing, suggestions for future shows, comments on what we've already talked about, positive or negative. You can send us that feedback at our Facebook page, the aptly titled Plastic Posse Podcast. So you can go there and find us there. And we'd love to see your posts and also some pictures of your builds that you're doing. Become a member of the posse and join in and help us. If email's more your speed, you can also reach us at plasticpossepodcast@gmail.com. And you're welcome to go ahead and email that to us. But to be honest, we kind of prefer the Facebook page. I think that's something that we're trying to build a community there, and everybody can kind of participate there. Reach out to us. We'd love to hear from you. All right, guys. Do we have any other listener feedback from episode 2?
We have lots. I first have to bring something up. I want to apologize if I sound a little funny today. I had a tooth removed last week, and I had kind of a rotten week. And I thought I had this beautiful opportunity to see something I can't wait for, which was one of our Facebook followers, one of our listeners, shared the Mandalorian Season 2 trailer, and I was so stoked because I wasn't feeling good, and this was going to be a big boost. And he freaking rickrolled me, man. Rick Astley in the middle of it. Patrick Morales, I'm talking about you, man.
Oh, man. Patrick, you're called out and you earned it, buddy. Rick rolling our buddy Doug. Oh, man.
I forgive you, Patrick. I really do. It was a good joke.
Yeah. Forgive us, Patrick. He got me my my Stewart kit, so we can't be too mad at him. So.
well, there's that. One thing we wanted to talk about, and I think everybody might have something to say about this. We are all for whatever feedback you have for us. Positive, we love. Negative, we really appreciate it. All we have is a request. We did get one negative feedback the last week, and it was an insult. We're just not going to respond to you if that's the case. If you want to say something that we can improve on, let us know, because we'd love to discuss it. We want to be friends here, right? We want to share this with you guys, and if you have something to share with us or you think we can change, we're down. But please, just don't insult us. We have a positive to start off with. Rob Morrison. Hi guys, listen to your second episode. Found it entertaining and informative. The discussion on painting is most interesting, as most of us tend to stick to what we know. It was good to hear about your experiences with various types of paint. When I got back into the hobby, I started using Tamiya acrylics and found them to be easy to use, thinned easily for airbrushing with either isopropyl alcohol or methylated spirits. Now I use Mr. Color self-leveling thinner at a 1-to-1 ratio, which works really well. I agree, Rob. I really do. That's a wonderful combination. I've now started using SMS lacquers and find them easy to spray, are quick drying, and the finish is quite tough. I look forward to you discussing clear coats. Keep up the great work. P.S. Have you heard of the Model Car Podcast? It's Canadian-based.
I've actually listened to a couple of episodes of that, and none of us natively do a lot of cars, and so this is something that we're going to probably need to look into and bring some automotive content in for those of our listeners that like building cars. I like the podcast. It's pretty well done, and it's 3 guys that seem to have a good rapport with each other. As far as SMS paints, I'm jealous that they're out of Australia. We do have one distributor here in the US. I don't have any yet, but everybody that I've heard talk about them, obviously Dave in our last show spoke very highly of them, says they're just terrific. TJ, you have any experience with this?
No, not yet. I've been eyeing a few, so I look to add some to my collection.
Cool. My experience with cars is I drive a car, and I believe Scott and TJ might also too. We have that going for us.
I do have a car model. I have a 1-to-1 scale 2001 Toyota 4Runner that I'm always playing with, and it's more or less a scale model. It sits in the garage most of the time until I play with it some more and upgrade it.
Hey, if any of our listeners have car model recommendations, like who makes good cars, let us know because we're all willing to give it a try. I just don't want to get lost in a bad kit.
Oh, the Tamiya Mustang. I know that's good. Their new whatever, 124th or 125th just came out like a couple months ago. So that is one car model I do want because I'm a Mustang fan because I used to have one. I watched a couple of build videos on it. It looks pretty nice.
You know, it's funny you bring that up, TJ. That Model Car podcast, the last episode I listened to was all kind of around that kit. And they're so good that the car guys are just snatching them up. These three guys, a couple of them hadn't even been able to get their hands on one yet because the supply was, far less than the actual demand for the kit. So they were just saying, that the kit is amazing. So yeah, that'd be one to target for sure.
All right, moving on. Hector Cologne. Hey guys, just listened to the podcast and I wanted to tell you great job. I'm sure you will find your niche. During this pandemic nonsense, I found podcasts to be my escape. I build primarily 148 scale aircraft, but I also love painting my Blood Angels. All right, we get some Warcraft action there. I am also with the Butch O'Hare Model Club here in the Chicagoland and will spread the word as to the new podcast to check out. Thank you very much, Hector. I'm going to butcher this name, and please forgive me. Demir Medrich. Good episodes, both of them. And that idea of join podcasting at a competition like the IPMS 2021 Nationals sounds great. Cheers.
Thank you.
Eric Kervina. I listened to episode 2 on my way to work, and I have to say it's not very good for that purpose because it made me want to call in sick, turn around, go home, and spend the day building models. It's the same energy I get from attending IPMS meetings and model shows, but oddly even more intense. I think I'm going to have to only listen to future episodes on the drive home. Thanks for putting this together, guys. I never listened to podcasts before. Really, I turned in to support TJ, not because I was interested in podcasts, but now I plan on giving some of the other podcasts you have mentioned a try as well. I really appreciate you guys broadening my horizons.
So Eric is a buddy of mine that I met at our local IPMS chapter, IPMS Nova. I think I met him my first meeting that I attended. It was only a couple years ago, and we have a lot in common as far as what we like to build. He likes to build X-wing or Star Wars and science fiction stuff as well. Thanks, Eric.
Yeah, thank you very much. And Mark Ewing. Just wanted to say well done on your podcast. Another great model podcast alongside the other three. I think you meant alongside the other three. I'll be very interested to hear more on your sci-fi stuff, etc. Maybe an episode to start in scale modeling, airbrush, spray booth, YouTube channels, Facebook groups. Keep up the great work. All things that we'd love to talk about.
Yeah, hopefully, Mark, you heard episode 2 where we kind of broke down the basic types of airbrush paints and kind of the pros and cons of each of those. If you didn't, hop on back and listen to that one. I think it's a really good start. And then we're going to take a similar approach as we start creating more content. We'll build a foundation on some of these really basic approaches to the different parts of the hobby, and then we'll get a little bit more advanced as we go along.
All right. Tony Jacobs' feedback is wanting more information on TJ's guns painting recipe. He's referring to the Warhammer 40K stuff that TJ's been sharing, especially the Stompy McStomperson Warhammer mech guy that he did. What's that called, TJ?
An Invictor Tactical Warsuit. Probably about the dumbest name ever.
Stompy McStomperson.
Yeah, so Tony had asked me about it, and here's the trick. It's using like 4 paints, but you make it look like there's way more work involved, and really it couldn't be any easier. It's a Vallejo metal color, gunmetal gray, which is like an acrylic all-clad style paint. It's designed for the airbrush, but you can brush paint it just fine. It covers really well. So prime black, paint all the metal parts gunmetal gray, dry brush it with a lighter color metallic. I used Vallejo Model Air Steel, which does not look like steel at all. It looks more like silver, but whatever. And then you paint the casing a dark gray, kind of black, I use Vallejo Model Color Black Gray, which is like almost like a NATO black style black. So it's not really black, it's more like a dark gray. And then you dry brush, stipple it with a light gray. I use medium sea gray, and that just kind of gives it a worn look. And then you give all the metal pieces an acrylic wash with brown. Any brown would use. I use the Games Workshop one just because that's what I have. It has a dumb name, so that's not even that important. Just use a brown acrylic wash, and boom, you're done. And it looks way more complicated than it is, and it took all of a couple of minutes. Like, super easy.
Couldn't be easier.
You should try it, Doug.
I should try it.
Yeah, I think so. If I can do it, anyone can do it.
Okay. What do you want me to do? What do you think I should do? Where do I start?
I don't know. Just go to the store, look at some Warhammer stuff, and find something that looks cool. That's how I got into it. And I was like, oh, these guys look cool. I'll buy these. And many hundreds or thousands of dollars later, I have a whole collection.
This sounds great. We're always trying to find new stuff for Doug to try. What do you say, Doug?
I'm not sure what my wife's going to say, because this is going to be something I have to buy this stuff. Okay, I'll take that risk. How many of you, speaking of wives, how many of you, when you talk about modeling or now the podcast, how many eye rolls do you guys get?
Not too much. My
Not too
wife's
much?
pretty used to me talking about it, so she keeps telling me she's going to listen to our podcast, but I don't know if she has. I think maybe she listened to like a couple minutes of the first one. I got good feedback though, so
I have a couple of sisters in Washington that logged on and listened to our first episode just because they wanted to support me, and I had to send them a "I am so sorry" Facebook message because neither one of them have any idea about anything to do with scale modeling. So I sent my apologies, but it was nice of them to hop on there and at least try it for me. So
That was good of them. I've got a couple friends in California I got listening, and they don't build models either, but they're willing to support. That's cool. All right, we have one more piece of feedback we wanted to talk about. A listener named Kip Jackson. So he told us, guys, I'm listening for the first time to your podcast, and I'm about 14 minutes into it, and the editing sounds a bit odd. Like Scott sounds like he's talking in run-on sentences without hardly breathing. So we were listening to this, and he's absolutely right. So that's something we're trying to address in this episode. Thank you so much, Kip, for your feedback. We really appreciate it. Welcome to the posse, guys, and thanks for the feedback.
time for current project updates. Let's talk about what everybody's been working on. I've got my little USS Shenzhou update for you guys. It's almost done. I've almost got all the decals on that little thing. It's kind of getting into the home stretch where I'm eager to finish it and move on to other things, and so I'm excited to do that, but it'll be done soon. I'll post some pictures as promised, but I've enjoyed it more than I thought, but not eager to buy another kit that has so many decals anytime soon. I still haven't changed my position on that for sure. Also finished painting the engines and the body of my droid for my little Bandai X-Wing. And then I have some weathering to do, and then that will be finished. I'll post some pictures of that. That's my green X-Wing that I based on a Phoenix Squadron fighter. And so hopefully you guys will like that. A little bit off the beaten path there. I did build my first Warhammer 40K figure, TJ. I built a Tau. That was kind of fun. The kit's a little bit older. I had to do a little bit of filling and sanding and stuff like that. But overall, he's pretty cool. I think he's kind of a robot dude. I don't know much about the Tau, but I have 2 or 3 others to do as well. But so far, I got one finished.
nice. Welcome to the grim darkness of the far future.
That sounds good. I think I'll be following your coaching of Doug with interest over here in the corner. So, Doug, what's on your bench? What's your update for this week?
You know what? I'm embarrassed to say I've done very, very little, and most of that due to that the teeth extraction. I spent a week feeling just like garbage. I didn't even want to move, so I didn't do much in the last 2 weeks. I did do a little bit of some sponge chipping on the Warhammer tank my son asked me to build, and a little bit more weathering that way. Otherwise, I've been kind of dead to the world for a little while, but I'm feeling good now. I'm ready to get back at it.
TJ, if our listeners have been looking at our Facebook page, they've seen some of your updates, but talk to us about your Warhammer projects. You've got several going at the same time.
Oh man, do I ever. So let's see. This last weekend, really, Labor Day weekend, I finished the Invictor Tactical Warsuit model. I finished the Ironclad Dreadnought model. And what else did I finish? Oh, that's all I finished. And then I built a Space Marine Impulsor. It's kind of like a hovering armored personnel carrier. And I think that's pretty much it. That's the bulk of what I did. And then I think I primed some stuff that I already had built. I built my Sisters of Battle Sister Squad for the Miniac charity event. So I have exactly, well, I think now I got a little over 4 weeks to finish. I have to be done by October 1st. So I guess like 3.5 weeks. So I got those built and all built. I got a couple of them primed. I started painting one of them to see how the scheme turns out, because you follow the scheme he gives you, and it looks pretty cool. So I'm going to put a picture up on it of it up on the Facebook page, probably when we're done recording this, of what I have. But yeah, that was my week.
You put us to shame, man.
Oh man, beautiful, beautiful stuff. Make sure you guys check out TJ's work.
And it's not just his work, it's the fact that he's saying I said I chipped something. Scott worked a little on something. Well, TJ says I finished this and I finished this. And I finished
Well,
this.
to be
We don't
fair,
finish.
I worked on both the Warsuit and the Dreadnought for probably over a week each, so I'm not that
Okay.
fast.
Well,
But
I'm just saying. I think if we're gonna have Doug try new stuff, if I'm trying new stuff, then I think our challenge should be make Scott finish a kit.
Fair enough. Challenge accepted. In all seriousness, let's talk about this a little bit, because TJ, as you've been wrapping these projects up, and we've challenged Doug to kind of do some of this as well, and I'm interested, but kind of walk us through maybe a beginner's primer of TJ's approach to how you're painting these Warhammer figures and vehicles. Walk us through maybe your painting process and what that looks like.
So when I'm painting Warhammer stuff, especially the vehicles and the walkers and stuff, not so much with like the infantry figures, but unlike a lot of painters that I see on Facebook and even like at the stores that I and other painters that I know, I approach it like I would a quote unquote traditional scale model. I don't do a lot of the edge highlighting, which if you are familiar with the Games Workshop style of painting, everything has an edge highlight, even if it doesn't make sense. Like, oh, there's a line, there's an edge here, let's put a highlight on it. That's just the way they do it. I'm not the biggest fan of that, because for one, I don't think I'm that good at it, and two, it takes longer than I'm willing to to put into it, and C, I don't think it looks that realistic. Not that, a 10-foot tall walking robot with a Space Marine strapped to its stomach is realistic, but I try to treat it like it's an actual machine, like I would with a tank.
Exactly. So you're talking about the system, right? The Games Workshop system.
Yes.
That they kind of push.
Yeah, and their system's fine. I'm all for it. They make it easy. They make it simple. This is, I think Doug mentioned it in one of our other episodes. They give you a list of paints, and if you want your model to look like this, these are the paints you use in the order that you use them. And I think that's great. It helps get people involved, and as a gamer, and as a gamer with more than one army across various systems, most of which aren't painted, even I don't like seeing unpainted models, and I have quite a few unpainted models. There is nothing better than sitting down at the table and you get out all your painted models and your opponent gets out all his painted models, and you play an awesome game on a cool tabletop with interesting terrain and neat stuff. It doesn't matter what it is, even if it's Warhammer or like Flames of War like I play, which most of my Flames of War armies are painted. But yeah, it's great. And if you go into a game store, you don't see a lot of that, and it's a shame, because it's really fun. It's the part of the hobby I enjoy the most.
Well, I have to say, I've always been interested in sci-fi modeling, but we've talked off the air about this exact thing. But the secret sauce of what's really brought me back to science fiction modeling is whether it's Gundam or whether it's these Warhammer kits or even traditional subjects like the Bandai vehicles and droids. But you've got these modelers, yourself included, that are bringing armor finishes, chipped paint, and washes and rust, and so you're sort of bringing what have always been traditional military modeling processes, and you're bringing those to these science fiction subjects. And I think it makes it just so much more intriguing from a visual standpoint when you're bringing that approach to a science fiction subject. It's almost like it makes science fiction, which is by its very definition kind of has a fantastical element to it. It almost makes it more realistic and more palpable, if that makes any sense.
No, it totally does. And I'm happy to see that like weathering your Warhammer models has gained in popularity, just based on what I've seen on the various forums and Facebook groups and in YouTube videos. But and this is not a knock on them, on these painters, but a lot of it is what as traditional scale modelers we would call kind of rudimentary. Like they don't really embrace using oils for weathering or using enamel product. Like that's kind of the new thing now. I've seen in some videos like, oh, there's these enamel products you can use and you can remove it with white spirit or enamel thinner. It's way different than, a Games Workshop Agrax Earthshade wash. And it is. And yeah, so that's cool. And I like seeing that. And I've been doing it, for a while. I'm not some trendsetter or anything. No one learned it from me because I don't have an online presence like a lot of these people do. I just did it because when I started building scale models, that that's the way I saw. Oh, this is how you pin wash. I'm like, oh, okay, that's cool. And then I just took that and applied it to a Space Marine, and now it's kind of catching on. And again, I'm not claiming any credit for that, so don't don't misconstrue what I'm saying. I'm glad to see, but I'm glad to see that people are doing it. But I like when I was posting pictures of the war suit on some of the Facebook groups I'm in, and I think I sent you that one screenshot, Scott, where someone's like, "Oh, it needs more dry brushing," and I was like, "No, man, like this is like hairspray chipping, like the Mike Rinaldi method. This isn't dry brushing. Not that there's anything wrong with dry brushing. You can do dry brushing properly and make it look really nice." Which I think you, Scott, and we've talked about before. But yeah, like these are kind of alien concepts to a lot of hobby miniature painters, and I'm hoping that some of these scale modeling techniques become a little more prevalent, because I think it makes it a little more interesting.
Hopefully you guys are having fun listening about that. I know we kind of rambled on and on here, but TJ, let's circle back around, and why don't you walk us through on those suits, kind of what your finishing process looks like. Just give us a basic overview of what you do and how you approach it, and then let's go from there.
All right. So, especially, I mean, with anything, I typically do sub assemblies, and anyone that's built scale models is probably aware of sub assemblies, but some more game enthusiast miniature painters probably may not know. But it's you build as much as you can to where you're not going to put yourself at a disadvantage or make painting it harder. When you build a tank, a lot of times that'll be you build the hull and then you build the turret, but you leave them separate. Or sometimes you leave the running gear off or the fenders off, like on a tank. Obviously, a combat walker doesn't have fenders, but they have armor plates that strap over, like the endoskeleton or whatever you want, the actual machinery. So you leave the armor plates off, so you can paint those separate because they're a different color. They're your armor color, and then the interior is I use like a gunmetal color, like it's made out of steel or whatever. That's how I try to do it. I don't want to make more work for myself, by making it more difficult to paint, but at the same time, I don't want to make it so I've got so many sub-assemblies that I've got to pick up each individual one, paint it, set it down, pick up the next one, because at the same time, I want to get it done. It's not a 35th scale Sherman that I'm going to spend 60 hours weathering. No, this is one unit out of 40 that I've got to get done. So, all that, if you're working in too many sub-assemblies, you're just making more work for yourself. It's going to make it take longer to paint. You'll get less painted, which is not the goal. I use Mr. Surfacer 1500 as a primer, cut with Mr. Leveling Thinner. And that's something I've been pushing a lot in the non-traditional scale modeling Facebook groups I'm in. Like, hey, there's more stuff than the Vallejo surface primer garbage. Like, just throw that crap in the trash can where it belongs, like I did years ago. And trust me, you'll never be happier.
Everybody out there, that's TJ at Plastic
That's
Posse.
right. Yeah, changed my mind.
Yeah, no, that's a great point.
Put my face on that meme. Vallejo surface primer is garbage. Change my mind. But guess what? You're not going to, because I already know that it is.
He's right, by the way. He's 100% right.
And sidebar, go into like a Warhammer painting group and say that, and you would have thought someone just slapped the queen. The way people react, like, oh, how could you say that? I'm like, oh, because I know better. That's how I can say that.
I can't concur because I've just never used the stuff.
You're not missing anything.
No, I know. Why would I use the Mr. Leveling Surfacer?
Yeah,
1500, and it's wonderful.
Hey TJ, if somebody doesn't want to use the Mr. Surfacer primer because it is a lacquer based primer, what else could they use as a really good primer to put as a base under their miniatures?
If you're sticking with water based acrylics, which there's nothing wrong with that, just there's better ones than Vallejo surface primer. Get Badger Stynel Res or Ammo One Shot. It's the same stuff. It's just repackaged, and use that. That's my other go-to. So on larger stuff, I will typically use the Stynel Res just because I don't use an extractor. I don't use a spray booth. Chastise me all you want. I know I probably should. My current setup doesn't really allow me to use one where my desk is. If I was to pipe it outside, it would be too far away. So I just rely on my respirator and keeping people out of the basement while I'm painting, which is not hard to do.
So the respirator is very important.
Yeah.
One other trick you can do is if you have a window that you can open anywhere near, you can use a fan and blow the fumes to the window.
And I do have a window in my basement. It's not really near where I paint, but it's not too terribly far away. I mean, I can open it, and it does help get air circulating in the basement. But so I recommend Badger Stynel Res. I like it. I've got like 6 different colors, and they make even more colors than I have. I just didn't feel the need to buy them all. I mean, they even make like a gold, and it's pretty good. And they're all good. It dries quickly. It doesn't pull up like Vallejo Surface Primer does from masking tape. It's sandable to a degree, not as much as like Mr. Surfacer and other lacquer primers, but better than Vallejo Surface Primer, which just comes up in sheets if you try to sand it.
Your lacquer-based paints have that, they're hotter, and so they actually are going to bond with that substrate layer of plastic, by really kind of toothing into that plastic, and it's going to be very, very durable. But I found I'm a huge Badger fan. All my airbrushes are Badgers, and the Stynel Res is a really quality product. And one other thing before I let you keep going here, TJ uses all kinds of Vallejo products, so don't think that he's got a vendetta against them. It's just their primer sucks.
Yep.
He uses their paints and their finishing products, and so do Doug and I. So they make good products. It's just unfortunate that their primer isn't one of those.
Yep.
Go ahead, TJ. Sorry.
That's okay. I always prime, especially, a gaming miniature that's handled. It's a lot, you see a lot of painters on YouTube that paint traditional scale models that don't necessarily prime, and you can usually get away with that if you're building a tank, especially if you're using lacquer paints to paint it. But with, a gaming miniature, they're picked up, they get knocked over. Unfortunately, they're moved around. the primer just helps. It's not going to prevent everything. If it gets dropped on the floor, it's going to get messed up. I mean, there's nothing you can do about that. Gravity's going to win. But, just getting knocked around on the table, I've never really chipped anything. So I always recommend primer. And then as I've mentioned in some of the other episodes, I am a huge fan of acrylic lacquers. In particular, even though I'm not too pleased with the company currently, I like AK Real Colors. I use their olive drab paint, which I've mentioned when we talked to John in our first episode. It's my favorite olive drab, and my Space Marine chapter is all olive drab, so that's what I use. It's durable. It's got a beautiful finish. It's got an awesome color.
As far as your paint chipping goes, because I think our listeners are going to notice that right away because it just looks so fantastic. And understanding that paint chipping is we can probably do a whole podcast just on that. But maybe you could just give them a really, really quick run through as far as how you're going to chip that olive drab off of the model.
I went with a chipped and worn look to these walkers, which I don't normally do on a lot of my stuff, just to expedite the process because it does slow you down. But since these are kind of like machines and they're like walking tanks, I figured, might as well. So I went with like a reddish brown chipping color to kind of contrast with the olive drab paint, so it's got like a reddish hue to it because, red is complementary of green. So they look, I guess that's what it is. I don't know. Don't quote me on that. I'm not that good at color theory. I didn't go to art school. I know they're opposite on the color wheel. I think that's complementary. Is that correct?
Yeah, it is. It is, and it looks great.
So it's not red, but it has a reddish hue to it, and it was a mix of some Tamiya, I think it was NATO brown, which is a reddish brown, and a little bit of NATO black, with I think a little bit of just flat red added to it, just to up that a little bit. And actually, you know what? It's if you're familiar with Andy's Hobby Headquarters YouTube channel, I think it's essentially his quote unquote chipping color that he's made a video about. I think that's close to what I use.
He calls it his track mix, and it's probably in 100 of his videos. It's something he uses on every build.
Yeah, it's similar to that. That's where I got the idea to use that color because I thought it would work. So I spray all that on there. You can use, I did the hairspray, what they call the hairspray method. I didn't use hairspray. Have in the past, and there's nothing wrong with it. But I used, I think, the Ammo Scratches Effects. 2 coats of that applied with an airbrush. This is all airbrush. And then you paint your color over it, which was the AK Real Color olive drab mixed with Tamiya dark yellow 1-to-1 for like a lighter color, for like a lighter olive drab. And then you just go at it with a little bit of water on a brush. And I also used a bamboo skewer to like do some of this. If you look at some of the corners and kind of like on the knees, if you look at the pictures on our Facebook page, it's got like scratches. That's how I did the scratches. It was a bamboo skewer. So after you wet the surface, just lightly scratch it with a bamboo skewer and you'll get the paint right up without damaging. If you go too hard, you will go through all the layers, but since they're all acrylic lacquers, you got to work hard at it, but it could be done. So just gentle touch and you can get some really fine chips and it looks really, really tight.
Yeah, really quick for those who haven't tried it before. What happens is the water soaks through the top layer of paint, and you don't want that layer to be too thick. You want it to be kind of as thin as you can keep it, but so you want a nice opaque coat so the color looks good, but you don't want to go thick. And the other thing is you want to put that water on there and get chipping it right away. You don't want to let that top layer set up and dry and get really, really hard, or it's going to be really, really tough to chip that paint. And like any new technique, you're going to want to try it on a paint mule before you use it on a model, before you just do it. So grab that old P-51 Mustang that you've got 18 colors of paint that's in the corner, and try that technique out on that and see what you think.
Yep, I actually use, I think it's a 1/48 Spitfire top surface of the wings as a paint mule, and I also have an old Space Marine Rhino armored personnel carrier that I use as a paint mule that I got. I think I bought it It came in. I bought it secondhand from someone, and he gave me like a really good price for it, but it was a wreck when I got it. But I got it for like $5, so I don't feel bad using it.
For those of you listeners that want to see some more models that are chipped too, check out TJ's builds and also Doug's builds on our Facebook page. Doug, we just put some pictures up of Doug's ATST that he built that has some really nice chipping on the top hatch. TJ's models all have chipping, here and there on them. It's a great technique. It looks really terrific and realistic. So take a look at those galleries and you can see the great work that these guys are doing on paint chipping. Anyway, so yeah, how's the rest of that finish going to go, TJ?
So I try to do as much as possible with my airbrush, even when it comes to if I have to mask, because I feel like masking is still probably going to be faster than me getting out the paintbrush and the paint and trying to go at it. Now, I mean, obviously you can't airbrush everything, which is a thing I hear a lot, when people ask for airbrush recommendations, and that's what, a lot of the naysayers are like, oh, well, you can't use it with everything. That's very true, but I don't think anyone's really claiming that you can. So yeah, I try to airbrush as much as possible. Of course, with any model, it's gonna be different. And then when I get to the point where I feel like I'm not going to be able to airbrush anything else, I switch to the regular paintbrush, and that's where I'll get out the Vallejo paints and Reaper Master Series and the Games Workshop Citadel paints. And I think I even have some P3 paints and a couple other. I mean, I've got, 4 or 5 different ranges of acrylic paints. Scale 75 is another water-based acrylic paint that I really like. And this kind of goes back to what we were talking about in our last episode. So yes, you can airbrush those paints. Yes, I do sometimes do that. I don't prefer to, and I try to avoid it whenever possible. That's not to say it can't be done. If I have
These
to,
are the traditional water-based acrylics you're talking about,
yep,
right?
Yep. And they'll airbrush. They're just not going to give you, in my opinion, the performance you get from a Tamiya or MRP, or I'm going to assume SMS paints, because from what I understand, they're very much like MRP or AK Real Color, and that's just the way it is. You can get good results airbrushing water-based acrylics. I'm never going to tell anyone that you can't. I just don't personally prefer it.
And so you've got your detail painting done with your acrylic paints that you put on with a brush. You've got all your airbrush and your paint is chipped. And then what are your final touches to finish that model off?
Throw some decals on there. That's pretty. I like to use enamel washes, so I'll give everything like a semi-gloss or a satin varnish. I like to use Tamiya semi-gloss, which I'm kind of running out of, but I also have some AK Real Color satin varnish. I use that on, I think, the Invictor Warsuit. It's pretty good. It's very similar to Tamiya semi-gloss. Yeah, it's not bad. I'm going to use it some more because, like I said, I'm almost out of the semi-gloss, which is my favorite from Tamiya. I love that, but I have not been able to find it anywhere in stock. So, but anyways, yeah, I give everything a coat of that. I add the decals. I don't add the decals. You don't have to do decals on gloss coat. I don't care what anyone says. Gloss does not make your decal go on any better than it would. It's just that is nonsense. That's old scale modeling dogma, and I think it needs to die. Now, it's not going to hurt your decals, but yeah, you don't have to. And I see that in wargaming forums and wargaming Facebooks all the time. Oh, you have to put a gloss coat on before you decal. You really don't. I've put on tons of decals on my Space Marine stuff without a gloss coat. They all went on just fine. No silvering. That's just nonsense. So I'm going to throw that out. You can fight me about that too. I'll die on that hill. You do not need to do it.
It's TJ at Plastic. No, I'm going to back TJ up on this one too. The key to getting good decals, and again, this is going to probably be a complete, podcast episode at some point, but you've really got to know the kind of decals that you're using and have the correct decal solvents. A smooth surface to start with definitely doesn't hurt. It's probably a a help. But like TJ, I shoot for a semi-gloss finish on all of my models, and I don't have silver decals either. I never go for a full gloss surface. I also don't like to decal over a full flat surface, but that, like he said, that's kind of an old modeling myth. And you can get a really nice quality finish on your decals with no silvering, by just making sure that you're handling the decals correctly and using the correct solvents. Yep. And we'll, like I said, we'll do an episode on that at some point.
Yeah, I only do the decals after the semi-gloss, just mainly out of habit, because I was also one of those when I first got into it, like, oh no, you have to do gloss. That's what someone on the internet told me, till I realized, no, that's actually not true, and have tried it myself. And I've put decals over dead flat Tamiya paint. And if anyone's used Tamiya XF paints, they are flat. There's probably about some of the flattest acrylic paint you can get. And I've put decals over them and they've gone down perfectly fine. But yeah, I only do the semi-gloss just because it helps with enamel washes. They soak into the paint less. They're a little bit easier to clean up, and they'll suck into the details easier with a gloss or semi-gloss than they will flat. They'll do it with a flat finish, but I prefer the look with like a semi-gloss. So, yep. And then I do the enamel washes. I'm a big fan of the MIG washes and the ammo washes. They're kind of the same thing. Or you could do an oil wash. That's pretty popular too. I just prefer enamels because they're pre-mixed and I can grab the bottle, shake it, and I'm good to go. I don't have to worry about getting it, the consistency right. I'll let that dry. I clean it up if I need to clean it up. Seal it in with some matte varnish, give it a nice dead flat look, and that's it. Put it on a base and you're ready to go.
Nice.
Well, that's a great rundown and overview, and hopefully that's helpful for you listeners out there. And if you have any questions, make sure you drop us a line on our Facebook page, and TJ will answer you. And he can walk you through it. And I'm sure we'll be talking more about this. I'm fairly certain we're going to get some feedback from this episode, so we'll see.
And let me add this: if you do something differently than TJ does, and you want to discuss it and let us know, maybe we're all willing to try different things. Hey, let us know if you've got a system that works for you.
Yep, and I will qualify everything I say. I am not an expert. I'm not a person that thinks my way is the only way to do it when it comes to this stuff. This is my way. This is the way I like to do it. If you have a way that you like, I'm all for it. That's fine. I'm not going to tell you you're wrong unless you claim that you have to put gloss coat down before a decal or the decal is going to get messed up. That is an objectively untrue statement. But if you like to do that, that's fine. I don't care. Just like I like to put down semi-gloss. I don't have to, but I do.
There's a million different modelers and a million different approaches. And this is what works for us. And, if you look at the pictures on the Facebook page of these suits, I think the results speak for themselves.
All right, so let's talk about some new products. Maybe some stuff that we picked up, maybe some stuff we're looking at. I'm going to go ahead and start. I recently bought a handful of these ammo shaders. They are, from what I understand, they are essentially very thin acrylic-based paint, and you apply them with an airbrush. They come in a bunch of different shading colors, hence the name shader.
So almost like somewhere between a glaze and a filter.
I would say they're kind of like a enamel filter, but okay. I guess, I watched Mig Jimenez's little explanation video on his YouTube channel on how they work, and they're pretty interesting. They do exactly what they sound like. They shade. They're really, really thin. You don't have to thin them. They're thin out of the bottle. They come in a couple of different interesting colors. I picked up light olive drab, which really isn't a shader. It's like a highlight color. Military green, which is like a really dark, almost like a Russian 4PO green. Starship filth, which that's classic. A classic Abteilung 502 oil. It's probably the best oil paint color ever. It's so beautiful. Yep. And you can use it for anything, not just on starships. It's great on spacecraft, but man, I don't think I built a model weathered with oils that didn't have Starship Filth on it. And then I picked up Grime, which is kind of like a brownish, dark brownish color. Earth, which is kind of like a light reddish brownish color. And Ash Black, which is a kind of bluish black color. It's kind of interesting. I've been playing around with them a little bit. I'm not 100% sold on them because they take a long time to dry. The bottle says to wait 24 hours for them to completely dry, but the video I watched on them said you can hit them with a hairdryer and they dry faster, which is what I've been doing. Let me throw that little tip in there. If you don't have a hairdryer in your painting area or a heat gun of some kind, get one. Awesome tool. I bought one for like $8 on Amazon. It's got 2 speeds. It's only hot, doesn't do cool or anything, but man, it just makes painting so much faster. Because there's nothing worse than you paint something, you gotta wait for it to dry. Nope. Paint it, hit it with the airbrush, move on to the next thing. Yeah, so according to his video, you can also wipe it off with water, which I have not tried. Like if you spray it on and you don't like where it is, you can get like a cotton bud with some water dipped in some water and just wipe it off. I'm gonna have to try that. But yeah, they're interesting. Like I said, I don't really know what to make of them. I mean, they're really cheap. Each one was like $2.50. So I bought the 6 of them for what, $15, $16, maybe not even that. They might even been less. That might have been like $2 a piece. Yeah, I bought them from Patrick, as a matter of fact, because he runs the Andy Hobby Headquarters online store.
Yeah, shout out Andy's Hobby Headquarters. You guys got like 3 shout outs.
Oh, they're awesome. Patrick runs everything. Yeah, we're friends on Facebook. He's a pretty good modeler himself in his own right, and yeah, he's taking care of me with getting me stuff that I've ordered. And I know he has for you too.
Yep, it took me almost a year to run down that 1/16 scale Stewart kit, and he got me one off the boat from China. So really appreciated that.
Yeah, so I've been using them. I use them on the Invictor tactical warsuit that you can see on our Facebook page, and I think I did all the shading pretty much with these, and it turned out pretty good. It's pretty subtle, which is what I was going for. But yeah, I mean, I would recommend checking them out. They're cheap. If you don't like them, I mean, you're only out. I would just get a couple that look interesting to you, and if you don't like them, okay, you're out $5. I mean, you could probably afford it. If not, then skip them. But
anything else? Any new kits, figures, weathering supplies that you picked up recently?
Not too much. I've been really, I think I mentioned them before. I've been really leaning into this Scale Color acrylic paint. It's made by Scale 75. They're also out of Spain, like Vallejo. So they're very similar. I've been really digging their metallic colors. They have just awesome. The pigment is really fine. For a water-based acrylic, they're beautiful. I have a bunch of their like steel colors, and then they have a bunch of interesting like gold colors. They have like it's called like decayed metal, and it's like a brown, like dark, dirty, decayed golden color. It's really cool. And then they have another one called Necro Gold, which is like a greenish, dingy gold color. Just really interesting colors. I've picked up a whole bunch of them lately. I even sent a few to my buddy David that lives out west because I was telling him how cool they are, and he was interested in them. So I bought a few from my local shop and mailed them out to him. So hopefully by the time this comes out, he's used them and he reports back to me that he enjoyed them because I love them.
Sounds like cool colors. That greenish gold sounds like that might be kind of a good color to maybe model like corroded copper or something like that.
Yeah. They have actually really cool, just traditional copper color too. It's called like old copper. Yeah, it's a really cool color. I love these, and they're so smooth. They just go on so buttery smooth. For if you've ever brush painted a metallic acrylic, a lot of times they're not that smooth because of the the metallic pigments, but these are really fine. Yeah, so I've been really into those. If you see some, I would definitely recommend grabbing a few. They're cool. They got some a bunch of other interesting color, like normal paint colors too, that I've picked up.
I picked up actually another Warhammer kit besides my Tau guys that I already talked about. I picked up one of their older Eldar Falcon kits. It's like a hover tank, and I really like that. I think it's really neat. I'll probably put a kind of a camouflage scheme on that and use it as painting practice, but I really like that. It's a pretty basic kit. I've never built a Warhammer vehicle before, but it looks probably what it's pretty typical, I'm sure, of other vehicles. And then on your recommendation, I picked up a couple of the Vallejo metal colors for some paintbrushing work with those. I got, I think, steel and jet exhaust, and those look really, really nice. They've got a steel ball bearing inside to help agitate the pigment, and they look really, really good out of the bottle. So I'm excited to use those. And then my biggest new acquisition is I finally got my new Badger Sotar V airbrush, which I've been waiting for. I'm a Badger airbrush guy. They're great airbrushes. They're the best value in the market, in my opinion. They give you a ton of bang for the buck, and the Sotars are the cream of the crop as far as detail brushes. All right, Doug, I know you, I think you picked up a few things the other day. What have you picked up in the last couple of weeks?
Oh, I did. It was just yesterday. Made a trip up to MRS Hobbies in Sandy, Utah. Excellent little shop. He's got a lot of stuff, a lot of kits, and a lot of accessories, tools, and weathering stuff. I picked up some things. I'm really not a weathering master. What I've used in the past has been pastel chalks and oil paints, and that's it. I got some filters, some MIG filters, a couple of pigments, enamel washes, the MIG standard rust effects, and then I got a couple AK things, the gunmetal metallic new extreme metal paint, and a couple of their weathering pencils, medium rust, and the chipping color. I'm looking forward to giving those a try, just to see how they work for me. And I picked up the Bandai, one of the droids from Star Wars. I usually don't do the droids, but I got the R2-Q2 kit.
Oh, very cool.
So that'll be fun.
Not cool, because he's a bad...
It's just programming.
Yeah, it's all just need to wipe his memory, and it's all good.
All right, on this episode, we're going to do something a little different. We have a listener of ours, George Riddell. He asked us to do kit reviews, whether we built them or not, fresh out of the box or on our benches. He wants to know what we think. His recommendation was we do something rated by good, okay, or ugly models. We feel like it might limit us a little more, so we're going to do a 1 through 5, 5 being best, and we're going to rate these models based on our first impressions. For my kit, I chose the Trumpeter 1/32 scale A4F. This is got a special place in my heart. When I was a little boy, one of my best friends, actually still a friend of mine now, his father was a Skyhawk pilot for the Navy, flew for the world famous Golden Dragons off the, I think it was a Ticonderoga in 1967. So we were kind of raised around stories of this plane and what he'd done, and even watched him build this gentleman build a very large scale remote control version of his plane, which he, of course, after 4 years of building, never once flew. That's the plane I want to build. I want to build his plane. I've got pictures of it. I've got pictures of him with it, and I'm really excited about it. I've taken this kit. I've pulled all the sprues out, taken a good look at them, cut some of the pieces off fuselage and wings. I checked the fits. Fits actually look pretty dang good on this kit. The details pretty good. I would say, the cockpit will probably need a little bit of help. But other than that, I'm thinking this is going to go really, really well. Good enough detail everywhere else. The big complaint I would have about it is this kit comes with over 530 parts, and I'm not a big fan of parts count making a good model. I'm not looking forward to all the teeny tiny little bits and pieces, but whatever it takes to get the detail out there will probably be for the positive in the end. I will grant you that about 200 of these pieces are weapon stores. So it's got a full range of weapons, a lot of bombs on it. In the pictures I have of this man with his plane, that's what I want to model, because that's what I've got. There's nothing as cool to me as a scooter. It's my favorite jet of all time. Just a cool little plane.
Doug, is that a good kit for a beginner? Is it more of an advanced build? Where would you put it in that range?
It's probably more advanced. I would say that just due to the size and the parts count, I certainly wouldn't start with a kit like this, even though I know that the fit seems pretty dang good. And I'm really excited that the hump on the back of the plane comes in 2 pieces, but they're not split down the middle. It's a front and back piece. And so that should make it a lot easier to mount that hump and eliminate seams without having to do any sanding or putty or anything like that. So that's my kit. I'm really excited to get to this when the time comes around. And Scott, what do you have?
Sure. I want to do one that's a little unusual for me. I'm mostly a sci-fi and armor guy, but I do have some aircraft, and I have a kit that I decided I needed to pick up after I watched a movie. I'm a huge fan of Miyazaki and his films, his animated films from Japan. He's just fantastic. And his last film that he made was called The Wind Rises. In that movie, one of the aircraft that the main character that's in that story designed was the Japanese Type 96 Claude, the fighter that the Japanese used as a predecessor to the Zero. It's a carrier and land-based versions of that are available. The one I have is a carrier-based aircraft. It's an open cockpit, single wing, monoplane. Really, really nice looking fighter. Has a lot of character, and the paint schemes on it are really, really interesting too. Wingsy Kits is a fairly new manufacturer out of the Ukraine, and the molding on this kit and the fit of the parts is really, really terrific. Now, I haven't completed the build, but I did test fitting and looking at the parts in the box. The riveting detail in 1/48 scale is really, really nice, really right on. And the parts, I mean, this is, I would classify this for you aircraft modelers as better than Hasegawa. It's a nice little model. The pros of it are it's a fairly straightforward build. Everything has nice locating tabs, slots, things like that. So alignment of it's not going to be difficult. As I mentioned, the fit is really, really good. Cons, I don't know that there's really a lot of cons to be had for this. I did buy a couple of aftermarket parts for it, some resin exhausts, and a couple of resin control surfaces so that I could cut mine away and make them movable. I wouldn't really call those cons for the kit. It's very, very nice. Really a great little model. As far as beginner kit or expert level kit, I would say this is probably I'm going to put it right smack dab in the middle at about a 3. Certainly an expert is going to be able to really, really build a terrific replica of the Claude with this kit, but yet it's not complex enough that if you didn't have that many aircraft kits under your belt, that you'd be able to, you wouldn't be able to make a really nice replica with it. So yeah, I'm going to call that a 3. But if you like that aircraft, give the Wingsy Kits 1/48 scale Claude, give it a look. I think you won't be disappointed. TJ, what do you have for us?
Awesome. So I'm going to go with my favorite whipping post that I've mentioned, I think, in every episode. It's the New Tool Model 1941 early production KV1 from Tamiya. Pros, it's a freaking Tamiya kit. I mean, that's really the only pro you need. It goes. I've actually built this one, as I mentioned before. It is not painted yet. It just falls together. I mean, it really does. I know Tamiya has a reputation of being shake and bake, and I mean, really, this kit pretty much was. I think I built it over the course of 2 evenings. I mean, it's a KV1, so it's not complicated to begin with. It's just a big metal box. But yeah, it's great. I enjoy the process the entire way through. The gun barrel that comes with the kit is quite nice. It's slide molded. I chose not to use it. I used a metal barrel instead, just because that's me. The kit barrel is perfectly fine. I've seen builds with it used, and you can't tell, really. The fit is like a Tamiya kit. I mean, everything clicks together. Some parts you don't even feel like you need glue. That's how tight the fit is. Even the turret, which is kind of complex, it's not like got a weird like curve to it. It just fell together. No visible gaps. It's just beautiful. The only real con, I guess there's 2. With the actual model, there's no option for the screens on the engine deck. They're molded in plastic. Now, they're molded really fine. They look okay. But that would be an awesome spot for some photo etch, which I did not use. I just went with the kit part.
Yeah, they're solid. That's right. Yep.
Yeah. After it's painted and weathered, most people probably wouldn't notice. If you're a fan of Russian armor, you would probably know or notice, or if you built the kit, you would know. And then the other con is just the price. It's expensive. I'm not usually one to shy away from buying something that I want, but I think it retails for $60, which the KV-1 is a large tank. I mean, it's a heavy tank, so it's big, but is it worth $60? I can't really tell you that. I think it was worth it for me. It may not be worth it for everyone. As far as like beginner or expert, I mean, this is essentially as a Tamiya kit and a Tamiya armor kit. Anyone could probably build this thing. It would be an excellent first model, really, because there's nothing complicated about it. It's got Lincoln length tracks, which I'm not using. I'm using some full model tracks, but the Lincoln length tracks are gorgeous. They're absolutely wonderful.
One thing that I'm really looking forward to seeing yours, and then when I build mine, is the texturing Tamiya is doing on their new series of armor kits, on their new Valentine, on the new Stuart kit they did, and on this kit, you're getting cast texture right out of the box. That's gorgeous. On this kit, you're getting the plasma cutting marks on the armored plate sides of the hull and on the turret. The welds look really, really fantastic. Getting casting marks, those kinds of details in it are really a generation ahead of the old Trumpeter series of KVs, which are really good kits.
Yep, I would concur.
All right. Joining us on episode 3 is a new friend of ours, Cameron Corliss. He's local here to Scott and I in Utah. He has a YouTube channel. It's the Wasatch Modeler. He does a lot of build kit reviews, even product reviews, and we're happy to have him join us. How you doing, Cameron?
Doing good. Thanks for having me.
Tell us a little bit about yourself and your channel and what you got going there.
Yeah, so I mean, as far as when it comes to modeling, something I did when I was young and I really didn't put much effort into it. I was actually using my mother's craft paints for most of my builds. And then I got out of it when I got into it, being in my teenage years, like most people. And then when I got into college, I just really wanted a model of an F-22. I thought it was really cool. I'm like, oh, I could just build one. So I built that. And then I'm like, well, I really need an F-35 with it, because you can't just have the one. And then it just took off from there, and I've been having multiple projects on the bench ever since then. So after that, I've been just progressing to go into like joining IPMS, done a couple of competitions, got into there. So I kind of thought, what was the next step? And I saw some people doing some YouTube content, and my profession right now is corporate training, and so I kind of looked at that and went, I think I might be able to have a little bit of skills brought from my career life into this, and try to do that and also help my career as well. So I decided to start up this YouTube channel and demonstrate a few different techniques, mainly aircraft modeling, and going from there.
Awesome. I've been perusing your YouTube channel there. You've got a little over like 30 videos, 32 it looks like. Is that right?
At the moment, yeah.
And you're just going to keep them rolling. That's great. You have a lot on World War II aircraft, especially. Is that kind of your favorite? Is that your love?
I tend to just fluctuate with the ebb and flow of the Utah weather here. But when it comes down to it, I really like World War II history and a lot of World War II aircraft, especially like the weathering with it. And so that's one of my big passions. But modern aircraft is something that I dabble into here and there. But I've been leaning more towards, I think, World War II, just because of the extra fun you can have with the weathering.
Absolutely.
Tell me about the Tamiya P-38, and I bring that up because I have one, and I've never built an airplane before, and that's probably the first one I'm going to do. And as a matter of fact, before I knew you were coming on the podcast, I just happened to watch your build review on it, I think like last night or maybe the night before. Tell me a little bit more about that model, please.
Yeah. great, great kit. I think after building it, I wish that they had a few things in the manual that kind of explains which they say like you do this for A, this for B, but they don't necessarily identify that this is only used in G, this is only used in like the H. And so if you're going through building different versions of with like different markings, it can be a little bit of a challenge. And I wish they had in the in the manual to show which seam lines to fill, because I spent a long time going through to try to find which seam lines need to be filled. And then after I built it, I put it on to a certain critique group on Facebook, and there's a few people that kind of went in and they said, "Oh, actually, this line needs to be filled in." I went, "Really? I looked for 2 hours and I couldn't find that info." And so eventually, I was going to get this into nationals this year, and so I said, "Okay, well, if I'm going to enter it, I got to fill it." So I filled that up. So now I'm one of the better guys, I guess, to know which of the seam lines need to be filled. But that's the only complaint that I had with it. It's a gorgeous kit. The barrels were very lacking, so I put in the master gun barrels, and I think that added a whole lot. And weighted tires were another addition that were really warranted. And either that, or if you do seat belts, what I did is I just had a extra resin seat lying around that I just threw in. Those just set it apart big time versus some of the other builds.
So for the gun barrels,
Mhm.
from what I understand, and looking at the kit, I guess all the barrels are connected to like a piece that gets hidden behind the cowling.
Mhm.
How difficult I think I have the same. I have a whole collection of aftermarket I bought for it, and I think I have the master gun barrels. So
Mhm.
how difficult was it to line them up in that piece? Was it like
Mhm.
I had heard some rumblings that like, oh, it kind of sucks because there's not a really good. Because I'm used to building tanks where typically you just put the metal barrel into the hole where the plastic barrel is supposed to go, but it doesn't seem like this is necessarily the case.
No, there's definitely lining up. And when you have regular wings, you have two on the sides, and if it's a little bit off, then it's harder to tell. But when they're all four
Right.
like right there, I had a lot of sweaty brows trying to get that lined up. And this is before the Edouard kit. So the Edouard ones are, I think, the way I would go now, because they have it all just lined up and you just replace that kit part and it's
Right.
all lined up. But the master ones, I had to make sure, okay, which one is the long one, which one's the short one, because they're staggered, and then also make sure that they line up just right. And yeah, that was a little challenging, but they worked. I just plugged the ends and just kind of lined them up as best as I could. Could probably even make a
Well, I think
jig
it's
for it, but
yeah, that's probably good. Maybe I try that. I also saw you have a video for a Space Force A Wing.
yeah.
Tell me about that a little bit.
Well, was planning on going into my first nationals and this and that, and I was trying to look at different categories. What can I do to get into these different categories? And there's the humor in modeling, and then I don't know if it was me watching Space Force on Netflix, which I highly recommend as well. And I went, wait a sec. There's all these people that are showing it like being Star Trek logo and all this. I'm like, well, hey, you know what would be really cool? And so it was like half an hour later, I see myself on Amazon buying an A-wing and scheming up the plan.
So, tell us about. It looks like your YouTube channel's been going. I don't know, 7 months or so. Tell us about starting it and growing it, and getting subscribers. It looks like you have several hundred subscribers now.
Mhm.
So, talk to us a little bit about how that's happened and how much time you spend on it, maybe on a weekly basis.
hmm Yeah, so one of the big things that I do to grow the channel by far is just putting on Facebook. And at first, one thing that I did that kind of boosted a lot of views, not necessarily a lot of subscribers. So I tried to look for big controversial subjects in modeling, and be almost like a Will Pattison type situation and choose some tests and just say, no, no, this is why you're wrong, kind of thing. So I've completely switched gears from there and tried to do a few other things, and just try to be more of an educational thing. That's my background, right? And so try to be more educational, do product testing, tips and tricks, things like that. But it's been a very big learning process. I've been looking at what other people are doing, not necessarily in modeling, but actually like even watching my wife's fabric quilting videos and things like that, and go, that's a good idea. I should do that. Like with my new video where I have twin screens going on, that's not really something you see much in modeling videos at the moment. So there's a few things that I've done to just try to boost it. And what I've been trying to do is focus on more of just building the product, and things will just come from there. Because if I try focusing on and being like, why am I not at 3,000 yet? Why am I not at this level yet? And just trying to compare myself to others, I think that's where it just becomes unhealthy. So I think I've been mainly just looking at just trying to improve the channel and improve my content and go from there. And I think everything just grows from that point.
I think that's a great approach. My favorite video that you did was the one where you looked at decal silvering, like fixing it, and you did several tests. That was a really good video, and
Mm-hmm.
I thought it was a good length. I think it was 18 or 20 minutes, something
Mm-hmm.
like that, and it had really good content. I think some
Nice.
people like to let their YouTube channels or maybe their podcast go too long a little bit, but I like that approach. And
Mm-hmm.
your Bondic review is another video that I thought was a really good one.
Mm-hmm.
I really enjoyed your gap filling with Sprugetti. Although I preferred angel hair plastic as the term to use. That's the one I preferred. So
Yeah. And to be honest, I don't even really use that methodology. I'm actually playing with gap filling with Bondic now, as a different method, and it's worked well. But I'm like, you know what? Let's have an experiment.
Interesting.
And I put in that video. I'm like, I don't want to say that this is the best method, but it's something you could try. It's something you could do if you want to use it in your toolkit. Definitely not definitely not claiming it's the best method out there. So, but yeah, it was fun.
So I know you brought up Will Pattison,
Mhm.
and before we started recording, you talked about Scale Modelers Critique Group, or SMCG, as a lot of us call it. So
Mhm.
I've been a member for a number of years. That's actually how I met Scott. I
Mhm.
believe, Scott, correct me if I'm wrong. I think that's how
Yep.
we first
Yep.
connected.
That's true.
Um, and I know you had mentioned that it's been helpful to you,
Mhm.
and it has for me. I think for me personally, it's really pushed my modeling to a higher standard. Not
Mhm.
that it, I don't think it's all that important, or I'm not anything special. I think,
Mhm.
but just being around, there's a lot of really, really talented guys in there and
Mhm.
ladies as well.
Mhm.
Yeah, talk about that a little bit. How,
Mhm.
how do you feel about it?
Yeah, so I mean, the way that I got in was Will Pattison, because I was watching his videos, and he just kept on saying, "Yeah, so the boys in SMCG said," it. I'm like, "Who? What are you talking about?" And then eventually he fully said Scale Model or Critique Group, and I went, "Okay, oh, Facebook, okay, okay." And then I joined, and it's a very different atmosphere from other different groups. They don't really have any attaboys or something like that. That's one of their claims to fame with it. And if you say something wrong, they will very much be apt to tell you you're wrong. So it's really eye opening for learning. When I was originally getting into like competition stuff, I was trying to get more feedback, and I was trying to open myself up to feedback, because that's been a hard thing for me, is to accept feedback. And so this has kind of got me out of my shell to just very much uh, admit humility and go to these people that are definitely better than me and learn from them. And there's been a lot that I've learned. So like with the P38 build, I think it was thought it was pretty good. And like, but let's see what they think. Let's see what we can glean from there. There's a few people that we're looking at kind of the paint chipping, and they're like, I would change it a little bit. So I changed it, and that part is very subjective. But then, very much like a seam line, I'm trying to remember if it was Tony Bell or somebody in there that threw up a actual schematic and said, "Hey, no, look right here. This is a schematic, so this is actually supposed to be a panel." I'm like, "Oh my goodness, where were you 2 months ago? Thank you." And so then that led to filling out that and knowing more about the aircraft, and the other thing that has helped really too is as I started with YouTube, the guys have been in that group. A lot of them are YouTubers, and they are awesome about giving critique. There's a lot of things that they kind of went in there like, man, I might take a few notes from you. Or there's a few things that they're like, well, I would try doing this a little different in the videos. Try to make sure you have better lighting. Try to do this and this and this, and that will improve. So it's been just gigantic learning opportunity versus just some of the chaos that you can see in other Facebook groups.
I mean, it's it's hard to get honest critique
Hmm.
in a lot of places on
Hmm.
Facebook, and I get it,
Hmm.
to a degree. And I don't know how much you've listened to, or if you've listened to our other episodes, but I started as a miniature painter for like wargaming,
Hmm.
and typically in those circles, like you can't say anything negative to anyone ever. Like
Right.
and by negative, that means anything that isn't, oh man, that's awesome. Like
Hmm.
not it's so for me coming into somewhere like SMCG, it was like, oh man, there's like, oh, you can actually tell someone that there are things that could be better. That's almost like revolutionary
Hmm.
and kind of refreshing because I don't like criticism as much as anyone else. That's unwarranted, but I'm also the first to admit that everyone can improve. I don't care what you do or how good you are at it. Everyone can get better at
Hmm.
whatever it is.
Yeah.
TJ's tougher on his work than anybody else at CMG is. He's a pretty harsh critic on his own stuff. Seems to me like the people that have strong online following, like Uncle Night Shift and everything, are the people that they don't take themselves real seriously. They realize there's an element of entertainment to it. The editing is really good. The videos aren't overly long. They're well shot. And so that sort of consumer element of, somebody logging in, they want to learn something, but they also want to be entertained,
Hmm.
I think is really, really valuable. And I think your channel's doing a good job of kind of moving in that direction. And I think you're going to be really successful with that.
Well, thanks. Appreciate that.
Well, what do you want people to know about your YouTube channel? What do you have any special content planned or
Hmm.
some new videos that you're working on right now?
Yeah. So right now I am going through a couple processes of the tale of the three little fuckawolves. Getting through, let's see, the third part of doing all like the painting and different things. I'm waiting on a new compressor. You can actually see part of my failure. Wasn't sure what happened during that video. In the video, I thought I was just mixing wrong, but then as I was doing more with my airbrush, I figured out the actual problem was consistent airflow. And so that's probably actually going to be an upcoming video where I'll show you what the difference is between a basic old decrepit dying compressor versus a new compressor with an actual air tank and everything. So I'll show you what that benefits. But what I want to do with this multi-part series of building these little FW190s is to show you weathering processes throughout the whole setup. And we're going to vary it. So I have three of them. So cockpit, I just kind of played a little bit with it. But then when we get to pre-shades, I did different options. So kind of did the panel light and pre-shading. I did some black basing techniques, and then with the third, I just kind of did some randomness and just tried to experiment a little bit and see what the result is. And then after I put up the all the paints, all the rest of the modeling scheme and everything, I'm going to go in and try to experiment a little bit with filters. So that'll be coming up on probably part number 5, where we'll put in like dot filters. we'll probably make an actual filter or buy MIGS filters and go in and filter to variate as well on top of that, and just kind of go through the additional weathering processes through the whole build, but have three different variants to kind of show you and contrast the different ways you could approach it.
That sounds really cool. What kind of paint do you like to use when you airbrush?
Yeah, so right now, um, and I'm gonna get a crazy amount of flack from the SMCG guys. I do a lot of Vallejo, but right now I use a lot of acrylic, not necessarily because it's the best or anything like that. The thing that I like about just acrylic is doesn't smell, and I'm sharing the room as a hobby room with my wife, and so want to make sure the apartment doesn't stink up every time I paint. As far as when I can smell up the place, I really like MRP, and I've been trying like the AK Real colors, and that mix with Mr. Leveling Thinner has been really good, and so I like that. But for sake of just ease of cleanup and just not smelling up the place, not needing to ventilate, I use a lot of acrylic.
Yeah, when you have an apartment, I think I mean, you have to do that, right? You don't want to have the person you live with move out because you're using lacquers and they get tired of the smell.
Yeah, we need to stress my marriage here. So
Yeah, we do that enough on our own as it is, right? Us guys.
exactly. How many times has she come to the model store with me?
Speaking of model stores, one of our things on our show is the local hobby store shout out, local hobby shop shout out. Who do you like in our area?
Well, actually, know Doug at MRS pretty well, but you guys have already pitched them. So if I was going to throw in another pitch, probably the guys over at West Valley Hobbies that are technically Riverton out there. I'll go out to there.
Yeah, it's a
But
very good
since you
show.
beat me to the
Very good
punch
shop.
with MRS,
I don't think you can go wrong with either store. I mean, they've got big selections of lots of different things.
Awesome. Any interest in science fiction modeling? Any gunplay on the horizon, or any Warhammer, any stuff like that?
I haven't done anything on there, and I don't know. It might be something that once I do get started, then everything gets kind of put aside. But I don't know. I'm a really big aircraft guy. Actually, I've done some pilot training and this and that, so that's where my love is. So beyond Star Wars Bandai, I think that's probably as far as I would go into that realm.
It's hard to go wrong with those. They're pretty awesome.
Yes.
How about armor? You have any interest in any armor?
Yeah. The thing that I like about armor is I can just spend almost, it seems like, a night or two just building it. And then you're right into the painting and weathering and all sorts of stuff, throwing mud on it. And so that appeals to me. But I'm not a super expert in all that. So it gets me out of my shell, and I'm able to do a little bit of something different. I'm switching gears and doing very much basic learning of weathering and all this stuff. I've got like a T-34 that's on the shelf of doom that I'm just kind of slowly getting to, and I just hate the look of it. So, but I've got some other stuff that I built that I do like, and I've got a Tamiya Panther that I'm kind of eventually going to get to, and I've got a World War One Mark IV tank that I think turned out pretty well, and of course, got to do with some of the tune tanks. So I've got a little bit of armor.
Yeah, they get a lot of hate, but I helped my daughter build one. I think 2 years ago. It was pretty awesome. I'm not even gonna lie. I was like, man, this thing's kind of cool. It was a little Sherman.
Well, yeah, I wanted to do one of those that was the red one with Santa, and I wanted to build one of those and have it be for IPMS, and it would be like the war on Christmas and have like a diorama. But yeah, it became January, and I lost interest in it. So
Yeah, a lot of us lost a lot of interest in a lot of things this year. Fortunately, we have modeling to help us kind of weather this storm, right?
yeah,
Awesome. Well, anything else you want our listeners to know about Wasatch Modeler? Maybe give them the Facebook page, spell the YouTube channel for them. Anything else you want to talk about?
So I don't really have a Facebook page. That might be something I'm going to launch. But so diving into Wasatch Modeler on Instagram. So that's just brand new and looking at trying to expand that a little bit. But my main focus very much is very much YouTube. So WASATCH and then Modeler with one L, as we do in the States.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
You
Thanks for
bet.
joining us. We really appreciate it, and we will definitely be hearing more from you in the
Excellent.
future. So thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Awesome. Thanks, Cameron. Appreciate it.
Mm-hmm.
We want to hear from you guys, what you like, questions that you have for us, suggestions. You can let us know who your favorite hockey teams are, whatever
Nobody's
you
done
want,
that yet,
whatever
you
you
know.
think is. You can leave your feedback, of course, on our Facebook page, which is Plastic Posse Podcast. You can email us at plasticpossepodcast@gmail.com. It's really, really easy. Like I said, leave earlier in the episode, leave photos of your builds, questions, comments, message us, just whatever you want. One other thing that you could really help us do, if you enjoy what you're hearing, leave us a review on whatever platform you're listening to. Especially if you could leave us a 5-star review, that really helps the algorithms and the search programs that they use to help our podcast reach more listeners when you do that. So if you wouldn't mind leaving us a rating, we appreciate it.
So I just want to remind everyone to visit our sister scale modeling podcast. Down in Australia, we have On the Bench with Dave, Ian, and Julian. They're on episode 93, so getting ever closer to that episode 100. We have Plastic Model Mojo with Dave and Mike. They're on episode 21. And we have Scale Model Podcast with Stuart and Jeff up in Canada, and that is episode 55. So check us out again in a couple of weeks. We got another good show lined up for you, and we hope you guys listen in.
TJ, Doug, it was a lot of fun. We discussed a lot of subjects, and looking forward to talking with you
All right,
again in
looking
2
forward to it.
weeks.
All right.
Take care,
Bye.
you guys.
All right, have a good one.